Hey everyone, if we haven't met before, I'm Alex Norman. I'm the co-founder of TechTO. Thank you for joining us for Founders and Funding. If you're on the East Coast, thanks for taking your lunch time with us. If you're on the West Coast, thanks for grabbing that morning coffee with us. For you people that don't know me, I'm an operator with 2 exits. I spent some time doing professional services, and I'm an active investor as the head of Canada for AngelList and a partner at N49P. We host Founders and Funding to help demystify the fundraising process and the relationship between investors and their founders. We find there's a lot you can read, a lot you can listen to out there, but lots of times it's the glossy version of what happens. And we like to get behind the scenes. And today I'm excited to feature Shruti from Array Ventures and Champ from Capsule. They are both based in the States, both have lots of experience. I think they'll bring a unique insight into what actually happens. But before we get started, if you haven't found it yet, there's a chat on this side of the screen. Go ahead and introduce yourself and let us know where you're joining us from tonight. Put questions in the Q&A tab on the right. And because I like to weed those questions and I like to make sure it's not just our conversation, but I know a lot of people are trying to understand this process. So make sure you get the questions in there and we'll pull them into our conversation. Finally, there's also what I call the emoji cannon. You can blast your emojis across the screen. Liz, who helps produce this, keeps those emojis changing and exciting. So it's like virtual applause, and I love to see it. So use it throughout the show to react to the conversation. And then finally, if you want to get to know other people in the community, after we get finished the fireside, there will be a networking session, and we will invite you to it once the fireside's done. And lastly, if you want to share using the hashtag TechTO on social media, we'd love it. Share your feedback, share the highlights, share the quotes that you hear that have changed your perception or perspective. And finally, there's someone you like in a future episode, share that via TechTO as well. Before we get started, we couldn't do this without our partners at FastSpring. Anna, can you please come on stage?
Hello.
Hey, how's it going?
Not bad, not bad. It's a little snowy here in Halifax, but eventually I'm sure it's going to melt. So,
well, you guys have had such a wonderful fall and winter. Every time I spoke to you before, it seemed like either you or Liz were outside enjoying the weather. So
yeah, it's not that bad. It's been pretty warm, but we always have a couple snowstorms at the end of spring. Yeah. So,
well, I've explained to my kids it's like 10 Celsius here in Toronto right now, that this is a tease, and we're going to have at least another snowstorm before they can get their shorts out.
Oh yeah, you always have to prep for it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So at FastSpring, we're here to help SaaS and software companies increase their revenue. So all we do for you is making sure we accept payments from major currencies all around the world, collect VAT and taxes. So for today, we have an amazing guide to help you navigate discount campaigns. So for instance, everyone really loves a good sale. 80% of shoppers are willing to go out of their way just for a deal. So we essentially did all the dirty work for you and did our studies looking at thousands of different companies that have put out discount campaigns and have found all the tips and tricks exactly for you. I'll be putting the link in the chat, and I really encourage you to download it and learn all about discount campaigns.
Thanks, Anna. It's always good seeing you, and I'm glad that your FastSpring's been with us since the beginning. So
yeah,
I hope next time we do this, you're outside showing off the great weather.
Hopefully, I'd love that too.
Cool. I'd like to get on to the main event, and I'd like to welcome Shruti and Champ to the stage. Hey guys.
How are we doing? Hey, Alex.
Thanks so much for joining us. I'd like to get into it. Usually I ask for a quick introduction, but I like to spend a bit more time understanding both your backgrounds because I think we'll find them both fascinating. So maybe just give us, Shruti, start with a 30-second overview of your background before we go deeper into it.
Yeah, quick background: engineer, founder, investor. 10 years of engineering experience and 10 years of venture experience. I think the thing I've done most recently is start Array Ventures, which is about 5 years ago. That's how you and I met. And Array invests in B2B enterprise companies. And our biggest focus is thinking and helping founders get from that 0 to 1 stage. Usually that's focusing a lot on go-to-market. And that's when I met Champ, and I'm super excited about the 0 to 1 stage for Capsule. So I'll have him introduce himself.
Hey everybody, I'm Champ. I am the co-founder and CEO of Capsule. You can learn more about Capsule at capsule.video. We are trying to make it much easier for people to produce short-form video content by leveraging creators and communities surrounding their companies and businesses. A little bit about my background. I've been in the tech industry almost 20 years now. I originally was a designer and then realized that if I wanted to build things, I had to learn how to code. So taught myself how to code. Initially was a front-end developer, then got it really deep into iOS development, pushed some of the very first apps out to the App Store. One of my favorite things is that Steve Jobs was a beta tester of mine at one point. That was pretty cool. And now I've just been really focused on building creative tools. So it's my third startup in the sort of creative technology space. And just really excited about the idea of empowering non-creators to feel more creative, people who aren't, might not raise their hand and call themselves creative, and then also making people who are creative a bit more productive. And so I think one of the things that excites me most about video is just how difficult it is of a creative problem, right? There are so many challenges from shooting content to editing it to color to typography to motion. And so really trying to build tools that make those things easier for businesses.
Champ, for people that didn't check out your website yet, can you explain a bit what Capsule does with video?
Yeah, so the very first thing that we released was a community-based video tool. And the way it works is you go to our website, you create an account, and you create your own capsule. And the capsules are basically just like galleries of content around topics, questions, or themes. And so you essentially get a link. You can send that link to a community of people, and they can all submit answers to whatever questions or topics you've given them. And then all of those videos get automatically edited using the really interesting video tech that we've built. So they all kind of have a professional look and feel to them with music and lower third graphics and personalization. And so it makes them really easy to share. So for businesses who want to bring people together to create great content that they can then share out to the world, that's really authentic, but also on brand, Capsule is a great solution.
So Shruti, how'd you meet Champ, and what interest, how does this fit into your thesis? Because your thesis seems to be very deep tech, B2B, like you said, helping customers helping founders get from 0 to 1. So love to hear how you came across Capsule, how you met Champ, and then what initially piqued your interest.
Champ has an advisor named Wilson Kriegel. Did I say his last name right? And he is also someone I've known for almost a decade now too. And when Champ and team were about to raise their first round of capital, which is when we invest, he introduced us. That's great you say that, that I only invest in deep tech companies. Because when Capsule came to me, and when Champ came to me, I think the deck said everything about community and video and all sorts of consumerish words. And I think most people would have literally looked at it and said, like, if their focus wasn't that, they would have said, I'm not interested. But for someone like me, I spend, this was, we invest based on, I would say, thesis driven in some ways. So I wanted to do an investment in this category, video something, but I wanted something differentiated. And so when Capsule came to me, this is often when we invest, which is when the message looks a little garbled and it's something is there. I just need to figure out what it is. And if the founders can't get there within 1 or 2 meetings, then we're off. I mean, my job is to take them to 0 to 1. And one of the big things is helping them with positioning. So that's what I did. When I was sitting there and I said, okay, let's do a demo. And they're like, okay, sure. And then they spend this hour on demo, like just talking about like, that's just a thing they're doing and community is what they're focused on. I was like, guys, this is the deep tech. The tech is the platform. I mean, let's step back. How many times have you tried to edit a video? How many times have you spent hours on it? I mean, I have all this content out there. I know, like I just edited a bunch of videos from my annual meeting and put it on Vimeo, and oh my God, it's not easy. So what Capsule does for a lot of these businesses that can't afford to constantly produce content is create videos on the fly, but not like just record it and like put it. It's not just a platform to aggregate things, right? Like what they do and what their secret sauce is, you submit something and then they make you look beautiful. I mean, who doesn't want that? That's like the whole power of why we want to be on video. So it's on the fly, it's real time, and it shows up in less than 30 seconds, right? Like that's different. And what they did not talk about is just that with me. So what we did was spend that time trying to reposition the whole messaging around why their tech, why it's different, how hard it is to build that tech, and then how do I build a product-led growth company with that tech versus a marketing first, company, which is what they were going after, with the whole community and other approach. Community is a very big part of it. I mean, this is a reason why their product is already taking off. But it's not the reason why people love their product. The product is the reason people love their product and use them. So anyway, that's how we met. And since then, it's been amazing. I would say it's been 6 months, Champ, at least, right? 6 months or 9 months, or and then we've done something phenomenal with Capsule. I think when we were just talking about raising, so we write first checks, and so I led the round. We write average $1 million checks. He wanted to raise 2 million, and we said, well, what about doing something phenomenal? There's a power in this community that is underrepresented, women, on the cap table. How about we go out and raise a whole round from all women investors on the cap table? And Champ said that. Actually, I was just kind of talking generally about all the issues of fundraising and so forth. And he said that, and I said, oh my God, I've always wanted to do that, but it doesn't happen overnight. And I can't believe you want to actually dedicate time to this when everyone always says, let's just take the money from whoever I get and move on with the business. So I highly respect that approach. I highly respected what Champ wanted to really achieve in this business and how he thinks about building his fourth business. So anyway, that's like the big background of what we did. We actually ended up raising a whole entire round with all women on the cap table, which is unheard of. And what we're doing now is focusing on that 0 to 1 journey, which he's not far from. And we've literally just invested in Capsule December. So I would say, like, if you're looking for the next rocket ship, guys, I mean, this is it. I'm really excited about what they're building.
So I love that answer there. And there's a lot of stuff I want to slowly get back to and pick apart a bit and understand better. But before we do that, Champ, I'd love to hear your perspective. This is not the first startup you've done. I believe you've raised money for previous companies. So why did you decide to raise at this point? What were you looking for in your investor?
Yeah, well, I think we decided to raise. So when we first started, this is a problem, by the way, that my co-founder and I have been thinking about for years. And so we had dabbled a little bit in different tools and ways to solve it, even before we launched Capsule. But when we launched Capsule in May of last year, so about 10 months ago, and get conviction around the product as soon as it was in market. So as soon as we started to do real customer development, handed prototypes to people and say like, hey, is this useful for you? We got really great feedback on it. And so, one thing I always encourage other founders to do is to, build. Everyone has ideas all day long, right? We're all ideas people, but I think it's really important for you to build a personal conviction about your product that is validated by real people in the market. And as soon as we saw that, even though it was just a handful of people, we looked at it and was like, all right, let's raise money on this. Let's see what we can do. And so went out to raise money. It's never easy. I've never had an easy experience raising money. But I give Shruti a ton of credit for a lot of reasons, but the big one was, having an engineering background and really starting to see, underneath the hood, even though it took a little bit of digging, what we were doing, she really got it. And for us, that was super exciting. And the reason why we really wanted to work with Shruti versus, the handful of other investors that we were talking to at the time.
And how about that first meeting when Shruti seems to understand the community, but got more excited about the story you weren't telling, and she basically sounds like she told you that the positioning from at least investor perspective wasn't right. So how that hit you? What did you think at that point?
Well, I think at that point she had already said she wanted to invest, so it didn't hurt as much as it might have otherwise. But it's good. I think getting real critical feedback from really smart people is one of the best things about fundraising, actually. And even if you fail to fundraise, just getting punched in the face by smart people is good for you. You have to really think about what it is you're building and how you're positioning it. So I welcomed that feedback from Shruti. And then, we spent 2 weeks working on the deck and the website. And, a lot of the things that she said were totally right. And we, went back to the market to finish raising the rest of the round. And it happened like that. Right. So I love that. And I think, the litmus test for a good founder investor relationship is, can you be brutally honest with each other, take the feedback and work together and feel like partners, as opposed to, just bumping up against each other all the time.
So I want to go back to finishing this round, but before that, both of you, Shruti, you've invested with many companies. Champ, you've had other companies. How did that past experience help you have this open and honest conversation? Because it sounds like, Champ, you've raised money before. You say it's not easy. Shruti, you see many founders. So what lessons did either of you take into this and help make this move smoother and realize that, hey, it's not just let's shake hands and not talk? So Champ, what's, because you've fundraised before, maybe we'll start with you. Yeah. Let's start with you there, and then Shruti, I'd love to hear what how this compares to other founders you meet.
Can you maybe rephrase the question?
Oh, so sorry, it wasn't that clear. My bad. You've raised money before, and how did the experience of working with other investors or raising money before enable you to take a different perspective and be open to feedback and working on that? Working on your website and positioning?
I think there's, I definitely think that, one of the hardest things I think about being a founder is that you're just constantly getting advice and feedback and, not knowing who to listen to and then also having the internal, how does it align with your internal conviction about what you're doing? And I guess one of the things I learned over time is that being open to feedback doesn't mean that you lose conviction about what it is that you're doing, your own idea, right? You're being open to other people's perspective. And I think early on in my career, I was much more combative about that, or I was I know what I'm doing, I don't need help. And I don't think that was the right approach. So that's definitely something I've learned, and I think it's just something that comes with experience in screwing up a lot.
And Shruti, from what I get from you in our previous conversations, you're very energetic, you're very direct. So it seems like you got how do you handle that first conversation with the founder where you get excited about the product? So how does it become about the product and their vision? Does it become about the personality? So what else are you testing, and how do you know, how do you just be direct and know that you're talking to the right founder?
It's a good question. I don't play games, so I think it's more just that. It's more here's my style, and I'm not telling people to change their business and their vision, but I know what works, and I'm pretty good at that. And I'm not good at everything that the business needs. I'm just good at the parts I know that need them to get to the next stage. And usually I have a philosophy of, every second of my time matters. As I'm a founder of a fund, and to me, I don't like that wasting of time basically. So when I get into a meeting and if I'm not learning something and if I'm not sharing something that they take away, as even if they don't think it's valuable right away, I've had people call me 3 years, 4 years later, said like, wow, I just want you to know that this was so valuable. I didn't think at the time, but now. So that's happened multiple times, that I have strong conviction in my approach. And what the approach really goes into is just being who I am and seeing how the founders work with me. So not everyone is going to work with me. That's okay. I don't need to work with them. I don't want any anxiety around, if I say this, will this happen? I think the focus for me is, if we work together, will we build a gigantic business fast? That's the only focus, right? Like, so for me, it's not the mincing words and walking on eggshell. Like the minute I'm feeling that, I'm out, right? Like I do not want that kind of founder. That I want those kinds of founders have their own insecurities and they're not going to succeed for me. So to me, the founder and the ability for people to go in and say like, look, I hear you, I'm not sure. And Champ and I have that conversation all the time. It's not like he's like, okay, Shruti, tell me what to do and I'm going to go execute. That's not what I'm looking for. What I'm looking for is, I hear you, let's figure it out. What do you want me to do? I'm going to experiment with it for a month. And then when me as Shruti thinks that, okay, they've done it. I've seen them do it. Didn't work. That was a spaghetti we were throwing on the wall, and that's fine because that's what startups is about. But if they're just like, I hear you, I want to do it, but I just don't think I'm going to do it, or whatever it is, that's like a bad relationship or a bad founder. I think you can pick that up pretty fast, because my first conversation itself is starting from that point of, let's just get working on your business. How are you go? I think like oftentimes my first meetings, they're very short, actually, usually half hour or something, but they end up being so, people just kind of want to work with me. And that's, it doesn't always work out. Doesn't mean I'm going to invest, and doesn't mean like, and there are some founders who's kind of like, oh my God, this woman sucks. And I think that's fine for me as well. Life is too short. And there's always another bus to catch. And maybe that next bus is going to get to a farther destination than the one I was chatting with anyway. So I think the biggest learning is work with people who have the awareness and the goal to kind of take input, as Champ said, and then use their experience and their own judgment to figure out what they need to do. But my job is to give them industry data, benchmarks, what works, what doesn't work from my perspective. So, and if they can't engage, then I think then it's definitely like a no-go for me.
So in this case, first meeting seems like it was super successful. From what I'm hearing, you committed for basically half the round, and then right away you went on raising an all-women cap table and helping with the round. And so why did you guys decide that the positioning of the website, like, so it sounds like you repositioned the story, like the deck, but you also repositioned the website a bit. So why was that vital before you went to other investors? And then how do you decide which other investors to bring on to have conversations with? Open to either of you.
Yeah, I mean, I can tell you from the story perspective, and then maybe Shruti can talk about the investor side. I think when you are as early as we were and are still, you are constantly, it's really a job of a founder to constantly evolve the messaging. And it's a never ending cycle of like, changing the website, changing the materials, changing the emails, like, because you're looking for signals in the market, right? I mean, you come out and you have this thesis about what it is that you're doing, and you're basically, as like Shruti said, you're throwing spaghetti at the wall, and you're just like waiting to see like sort of what do you start to hear echo back to you from the market or your customers. And so as we were fundraising, you have to remember too that VCs are also in a way your customers, right? You can't get anywhere without capital, and so you also have to be selling to them. And so it's important to not only have your messaging right to your customers and iterating on that, but also your messaging to investors. And I think what Shruti gave to us was a really good sounding board for what she thought other investors might want to see and hear in the product that we had shown her, but maybe hadn't done the best job of presenting to everybody else. So yeah, I don't know, Shruti, you have anything to add to that?
I actually tell every company I'm investing in that you don't need that much money. And I know 2 million is not a lot, but I tell them you don't need that much money. So just take my round and move on. And no one, I mean, a lot of people believe me and a lot of people don't. So usually what happens is, so we invested a little over $1 million with Champ, and I was, basically I tell founders, just work with us, and then within 3 months you're going to have interest in a lot of other investors wanting to work with you. That has been true most of the time, because once we do work on the slightest messaging, positioning, things, website, deck, there's a ton more than another, 750K or whatever folks wanting to work with you. In fact, the problem with us was not filling up the cap table again. It was a problem was giving enough ownership and all this other things that end up happening. So actually, we're rethinking our own playbook at Array on just, making sure that we just kind of convince founders to just take, because like just enough capital to get to not 24 months, but maybe a year. And then doing a much larger round, which is what we've seen as pattern within 3 to 6 months. And so Champ is about to do a round like that as well, actually. He's getting a lot of investor inbound interest. And then so, I was right about that. But I think most founders don't feel comfortable doing that. They just, there's an old playbook of 24 months for whatever reason, right?
Why do you think that is? Because it's actually a conversation I just had this week with 2 other startups, like saying, hey, you don't need to do that 2 million round. Let's put $500,000, 750, get a few customers, reposition your story, and go raise more. So what do you think drives that? It's just the number, people want to have large numbers. It's just fear of not working out in 6 months.
I think people just did that old school math of like, I need this many engineers, I need to get to 1 million ARR. It's just a bad math. The back of the envelope is the assumptions are all wrong. Market has changed, and the fundraising cycles have shrinked, and investors have shrunk. I mean, like the stages are moving around for all investors. So what used to be like a Series A investor is now like something else. Like everyone is doing something that they are not advertising. And I think founders don't know that. Investors do. I know which investor wants what stage, what metrics. I mean, that's just what I've been in the industry for over a decade now, in venture industry for a decade now. And I've seen the movement up and down for every investor. Someday they do seed, someday they don't do seed, someday they do Series A, but the Series A does not need any traction. I mean, it's just all over the map. And fundraising cycles have shrinked. So that is a big reason. So I think that is an important piece to remember, that, if you trust your investor and if you care so much about dilution and all those things, maybe, you should be open a little bit to like a different strategy on fundraising as well. Because if you can just dictate your strategy and people are just throwing money at you, you're going to do whatever you want to do. But if that's not happening, and it's not like that's not happening. It's more just like, if someone that you can trust, and it's hard to trust people early in the relationship when you don't know them that well, but if you do think you can get to that trust sooner, then maybe you should be a little bit open to a few different ideas, which is what Champ and I did, right? Like he was like, you're telling me to stop fundraising for 2 weeks, and you're telling me to go rework my deck, and I want to raise $2 million, and we're like, 75 or whatever % there. And you're just telling me all these people are showing interest, and you're telling me don't talk to them. Why the hell do I believe you? Right?
So hold on, Champ. Why did you believe Shruti?
Well, I think all great relation. My default perspective on life is, trust people until you have a reason.
Okay.
At that point, Shruti was, not only trustworthy, but also, financially aligned incentive-wise with me. And so, I wanted to start the relationship off right. I trusted her fully, and I said that I was like, all right, let's do this, and it turned out great. So
Shruti, you got Champ to stop raising for a couple of weeks, and did you what was going through your mind? Were you trying to figure out who the right investors were to get the story right? So what were you thinking at that time, and how do you decide who did you want on the cap table?
I mean, it was again, to me, it's very clear what I wanted them to do, and I think they were very clear what they wanted themselves to do. I think it was a matter of just finding the right words, finding the right approach, sitting and creating structure to the whole thing. I think when you're fundraising, you're just starting out, just like, on all fronts, just taking everything in. And I think when you get a chance to step back and create structure, methodical approach, building out a thesis, communicating with clarity what that is, all that takes time usually, and that's what I do well. I mean, pretty much sitting down with that and creating like a whole narrative, which is important.
And so you help with the fundraising, but I also know you're very involved in helping, you said going from 0 to 1. So like with customer development and positioning and getting those initial customers. So did you lean in that way in this situation?
I let Champ talk to that. I would say.
In terms of how we collaborated together, or
like what, how did you guys work on beyond just the raise and thinking about the sort of getting capital? How else did you guys decide to work together? And is anything in the customer development or getting the initial customers?
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, Shruti is great, and she's always out there hustling for us, and using the product herself too. So I mean, that's always good. But yeah, she's made a number of introductions to really interesting customers, some of which we signed. She's gotten she's wrangling like her influential friends on Twitter to post capsules, and so that's helping us with sort of broader awareness of the product. So yeah, I mean, we are in the weeds together, and I think that again is sort of the mark of a good VC founder relationship. It's like, are you on the same team, or is it just money and there's no value out there? And in our case, we're definitely like duking it out together.
Well, I think the thing is, people say that they want relationship with the investor, but like, I mean, like right now, YC founders, they say that, and then they want someone to make a decision in like 30 minutes. And then someone makes a decision and they go, let me get back to you on allocation. I mean, it's like there's this whole market of founders that actually do not believe in that. And I think the philosophy for me is go figure it out, right? Like you're fighting against just 300 people coming out. Good luck to you. Hope you win. But what that is doing is it's creating a whole narrative of like what fundraise and relationship and things that should be today. And it's I think it's a wrong approach, because people are literally saying, I want a value add founder, but I want you to add value in like 30 seconds when I ask you, and I don't want you to be on my board, and I don't want you to ever talk to me. Just give me money and I'll ask you when I need value. And it's actually, those kinds of founders scare me actually, because I feel like they don't know what they're prioritizing on. And to me, they can, sometimes the idea and execution can succeed regardless. So, I mean, even a broken clock is right twice a day, right? So those kinds of founders may accidentally succeed, but I don't think that's the kind of founder I want to work with.
And by the way, I can tell you, I've been that founder before, and it doesn't work well. And that's a lesson that I had to learn. I mean, I think a lot of times founders have this impression that like, it's us versus them when it comes to VCs, and I think that's just like a horrible way to build a company. I mean, this person's on your cap table for life. That relationship is super important. Not only for the company, but also for your sanity. And so like, if you are shopping your deal like that and giving people 30 minutes to decide, I mean, it's just like, that's a crazy way to, maybe you get a better valuation. It's damaging to your company to add people onto your cap table that you don't have a strong relation, not only like friend relationship, but working relationship too.
The one thing that does happen though, is like, if you succeed, whatever, no one cares. Like, I mean, people are fine. But if you don't succeed and then you did that kind of a round, yeah, good luck raising your next round.
No one has your back at that point. Yeah.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah. So actually, I'm going to take a question from an audience. Ak asks, perfect question for this. They say, what are some green flags to establish trust early with a founder? So I'll just change it to how do you know you can trust someone to have a working relationship? So what are the early signs you look for? Shruti, I'd love to hear from you, from a founder, and Champ, love to hear your perspective. So Shruti, why don't you go first?
I don't know. That's just like what Champ said. I think I changed my life as well. I've not changed. I've always been this person that just trusts people generally, and until they give me a reason not to. Even then, I think I've learned to just kind of give people a benefit of the doubt a few times. I think the whole philosophy that is out there, if they fail you once, then it's me or what, it's all that is bullshit. I think it's just people that are vindictive, insecure. I just think that when you embark on this startup journey, it requires a lot out of you, out of your family, out of your families that are involved as founders and companies. I think there's no time for bullshit. I think the goal is, what is that goal, right? And the goal is to really be big and fast, big and fast to, what am I trying to say? You get the point.
Just trying to grow quickly and be.
But the thing is, all this other drama that you waste your time on is that should I trust this person? Should I not? What is the point? Why? Why are you questioning them to begin with? What does someone have against you? Why would someone give you bad advice? What is it? Why do they have the wrong motive to begin with?
Yeah. So just quick response there. So again, we're talking about YC, we're talking about demo day and how 30 minutes to make an investment. So it sounds like that's not the actions. You don't buy into that. So are you going to be investing in YC companies at demo day on Monday or Wednesday?
I don't really go to YC demo days much anymore. Honestly, the thing is not that. Great companies have come out of there. I've invested in some, and I'm happy to invest in some companies that come out of there. The problem is not that. The problem is they have a wrong playbook. Their playbook is every investor is not valuable. And their playbook is investors are as good as nothing, basically. And so they have all this value add internal book face and all this stuff, but the thing is, it doesn't matter. Their whole value prop is move money, get high valuation, move on. And that's and I think what happens is even good companies that are raising money at this stage coming out of YC don't have a good North Compass, North Star, whatever on what that should be and how they should close an investor, because they're not getting good advice. And it's conflicted. All this advice they're getting from all sort of the same bubble of community of people is all false. So if you end up being the next Stripe or something, great. But if you're just kind of someone in the middle somewhere and you need a little bit of push and doors to be open and whatever, and you're just not optimizing on that, and you don't care what people are saying to you, that, hey, just take this money and we will work together. I think they don't know how to, because everyone says that, by the way, but so they don't know how to evaluate that person who means it versus the person who doesn't, right? So I think it's not the investor, maybe, or maybe it is investor. I'm just a different kind of investor, but the founders have to have a little bit of a smart approach to evaluating that as well, on who means what, I guess, and how they want to work with someone.
So maybe that's a good. So Champ, how did you evaluate that with potential investors? Again, let's call it trust, or who says what they mean, or who means what they say, I guess.
Yeah, I think it's it's kind of like hiring. When you're working and trying to find a VCs to work with. I mean, you're in the same way that they're diligencing you, you need to diligence them. And so the first step is, okay, this person, roughly, do I like talking to this person? Do they have, what I think is, and forth rapport with them? just like you would like in hiring, right? So you have a first call and you kind of like get to know each other a little bit, and then you dig and dig, and then it becomes like the trust part, I think, comes into play when the candidate in this case says something and you can verify that it's true, or they commit to doing something and they actually follow through with it. And so one example of that is early on when Shruti and I had met, she connected me with some really great founders, right? And I think part of that was her diligencing me and the company, but also she was adding value to me right off the bat and saying like, hey, look, I have a great network, and I'm actually going to allow you to tap into that network. And by the way, here are some great people I think you can work with. So like, I think those are kind of signals early on that's like, okay, this person, I like this person. I can tell that they're going to work for me and go to bat for me. And then there's there's always the trust but verify step, which is actually doing the diligence and getting some reference checks. And I would highly recommend that founders do that, because guess what? VCs are doing that to founders, so founders should also be doing it to VCs. And then you cross your fingers a little bit and just hope it works out after the check gets written.
So I like what I've heard from both of you. It's like, one is like, there's no games to be played, but don't take this as a transactional relationship. And then trust but verify. Yeah. And you see it by the actions. There's another question from our audience I'll bring up in a few minutes. But before I get to that, you closed around, I guess, in December, or you said, or January. So what's the relationship since? It looks like, from, I guess, the outside in, it looks like you guys talk often. How do you help each other and think about the future?
I can take that. I mean, I think we talk every day, probably, or every other day. So, we're constantly texting. And then when text gets too high frequency, Shruti just picks up the phone and calls me, which is great. So, yeah, I mean, we're like I said, we're in the weeds. And I think this is an important time for the company. So I'm constantly looking for that kind of engagement. And I appreciate it, especially with Shruti having such high conviction. So, yeah, I don't know, Shruti, maybe you have anything to add to that?
No, that's good. Yeah.
Shruti, is that the relationship you have with all your founders?
Basically, I mean, I literally tell people that they're my family, right? Like, we're all, I think being a CEO is a lonely job. And I think there are not many people you can call, especially not people that are aligned with you, as Champ says, right? Like, we have the same interests. And if you get over the blocker around, no, like, this person is in it with me and they're part of my team, then, it literally is just what you would do. You'd be texting your co-founder and talking and building things together. Obviously, I'm not involved in building the business every day, but it's that relationship of, you can trust this person because they got my back. And I think that's a relationship you need. But yeah, that's my relationship with a lot of my founders, yes. Man,
I don't know how you have time, like, because I admire that, because it ends up being, so I have a similar relationship with lots of founders, and my wife then gets jealous because she says, you didn't talk to me today. So I love,
amazing.
Yeah. So I love that you guys have that relationship. A couple last questions to go through, because I think this has been very insightful. So one from an audience, and Champ, this is to you. I'd love to hear what sort of traction you had at time of raising, or if you could basically share where you're at. So.
Yeah, well, I think we started dipping our toes into the fundraising process, which I don't recommend dipping your toes into fundraising, by the way. You should just do it full steam. But putting that aside for a moment, we probably started raising like 4 or 5 months into launching the company. So we didn't have a ton of traction early on, but we did have some pretty big customer logos. So we had folks like Google and Samsung who were signing pretty decent sized annual contracts with us. So we didn't have a ton of customers, but we had some really good, high quality customers, and they were getting a lot of value out of the product. So I know that's not like a super perfect answer, but that's about where we were when we started raising.
Well, what I say is, you don't need customers. I think that's a good question. You don't need customers. You need people to want your product. and it is potential customers. So in the diligence I do, it's usually, if you have customers, obviously great, I can call them. But if you don't, I don't take a lot of faith in that. It's like usually it's your friends or whatever, sometimes early days anyway. But if I'm able to call them and they can go on and on about why they love their product and why they're going to tell it to people and why they would want to pay more than what they're already paying, or why they would want to pay once it's built, those are some good signs for me. And I actually do that work. The thing is, I just get to high conviction very fast because I just know what I want, and I don't need to call the customers. I already know what the customers are looking for oftentimes. And I think I also believe the founders. Like when Champ tells me this is what Google wants, I'm not saying let's talk to someone at Google. I just know they're, what I want to believe in, and I like double check it with my own network somehow.
Cool. Last quick question to both of you. I'll start with you, Shruti. What if, especially because your thesis seem to be thesis driven or idea driven, if there could be if any founder listeners could be creating one company that you'd be excited to talk to, what company do you think has to exist?
We have I just published a 11 things I'm looking for, and that's just like 11 out of like the 100 things basically that I just published. So anything B2B, data driven, tech first founders, I mean, and check out that 11 things I'm looking for. It's in the space of like, it's in compliance, it's in API management, security, so it's all over the enterprise map, I would say. So check that out, and please reach out to me on Twitter or LinkedIn, and happy to take a look.
So what's your Twitter and LinkedIn if people want to find you?
Twitter is @Shruti, like @Shruti, my name, and LinkedIn is just like Shruti Gandhi.
Okay, great. And Champ, if there was one company you'd like to see exist, I know you're not an investor, but we always like to see what founders find is missing in the world.
Well, I'm working on that company right now. So,
blinders on. That's the only thing that matters.
I am not thinking about anything but my company, and hopefully I'm doing the right thing there. What do I want to exist? I've always wanted there to be, and one of the things I've always thought about working on but never quite did it, a better social music experience. I think that, Spotify initially, they had some kind of social features there, and then they sort of abandoned them, and no one really has quite cracked the code. I'm a huge music fan. I also am a big fan of community and digital community and hanging out with people with shared interests. So if someone ever wants to build that, I'd love to see that come to life.
How was Turntable, Champ? I'm not a consumer investor.
Yeah, I know. I thought that was a really interesting. They got some traction, and then
So Turntable version 2.
Yeah.
Thanks so much.
Remember, that doesn't make money, and then you can't last that long unless you get crazy traction. Just putting it out there.
Shruti, we can see you're an enterprise investor right now, not consumer. Shruti, Champs, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for joining us. I think the wisdom's incredible. Champ, I might follow up because I might want to try out try you out for our community and see if we can get some great Q&A going.
Let's do it. That'd be great.
So I'll follow up with you after. Thank you so much. For the people sticking around, if you enjoyed our show, we have a lot more stuff happening in TechTO over the next month. Next Tuesday, we're bringing back an insider favorite, Perfecting the Pitch. The founder and CEO of Zip Lunch will be pitching, and we will share feedback on his deck. We'll help him get ready to raise from investors. And I'm working right now on getting a couple angel investors to give comments alongside me. After that, we're also, later that week, we're hosting an insider social night where we get insiders together. You guys can ask questions, and we have an Ask Me Anything with Paul Roman from American Express. I think it'll be interesting to see how an enterprise thinks. You can ask him about leadership strategies. You can ask him about career management. And while we're focused on tech startups, it's good once in a while to reach out to people across the divide and who you're selling to see exactly what they're thinking about. But we're not done there. You also, if you're an insider, we also have a new mini series called Next in Tech. So lots of our events have founders that have reached the next stage. Like we've had the founders of DocSend, and we've had the founders of Square. And we like the community to learn what it's like to build a business. So the Next in Tech gets founders one step ahead of you, talking about the issues and how they overcame them right now. So the next one is with Kushbo, and she's going to talk about acquiring her first customer. And it's going to be interesting because she has a prop tech marketplace. So you can talk about getting the first investors or basically the first supplier demand. So I think I'm looking forward to that conversation. And then we have the following ones are, I guess, as getting your first hires, and then, oh, okay, we're gonna go through all of them, and then managing your mental roadblocks. So these are all things we've heard from our founders. They don't know how to get past them. So we're gonna go in depth. Swish is gonna lead those conversations. He's just a step ahead of most of you too, so it'll be great. Finally, we've got 2 more things I want to talk about. On April 29th, we're gonna do a special social night. We're gonna do pitch karaoke. We're going to get you to come up on stage and put some random slides up there, and you're going to have to pitch it. So if you're scared of pitching or you want to get practice, this is a great way, and it should be a lot of fun. And I'm working on a special guest that we might do a fireside with after that. So stay tuned. And finally, the last thing I'd like to talk about is on April 12th, we're doing our next TechTO together. We have the founder of Wonder School and the founder of Rapbook. For you, people that don't know, Wonder School is a Valley-based company. It's basically enabling people to run daycares from their homes. Super successful, scaling quickly. And then finally, Rapbook is a Toronto-based company that just raised its A round from A16Z. They're a fintech, insurtech play for the film and TV production space. So a lot coming up, a lot to be involved in the ecosystem, and we're happy to have you here. And finally, we're going to keep open networking shortly. We're going to open it up, and it'll be open until I think 1:15. So take the time to meet other people in the community, ask some questions, learn how you can help them, and build a real relationship. Thank you for joining us. Once again, I'd like to thank Shruti and Champ. I found the conversation very insightful and very honest, which I'm very glad, because I hope it helps you out.